Okay, this message is for Reza. Reza, we've done some fine work on Booty for this year, but actually last year now because it's 2026. So I have an idea, and I want to pass this by you for analysis. Okay, it came to my attention through a discussion with Kirkon that you might have high potential, but you're underutilized, so to speak, in the company, not enough MSMs. So we thought about this, and it's probably because you're either unable to generate a vision or your leaders are not giving a vision. So I'll give you a vision, okay? And you tell me whether or not you think this is a worthwhile project, okay? So let me show you something that we're doing right now with Thea. Actually, let's go back to Booty. Let's see, where are we on Booty? So on Booty, of course, you've seen this role diagram before. Okay, so this should look somewhat familiar. Okay, this is all good and strong and makes sense. Um, but I realized that there's kind of an opportunity here. Okay. So the opportunity here is related to this idea of visualization, okay? And being able to first accurately portray a visualization around a particular idea. Now, we already know in Aether, we can make heat maps showing the relative importance of, let's say, a region in terms of its popularity. The other area that I'd like to explore with you is this, okay? So I probably don't need to load Aether. You already know what it looks like, okay? So at a high level, I'm thinking about the business plan. I'm thinking about how can we actually create stronger visualization and stronger understanding about a idea with, let's say, the capabilities that we currently see in generating AI. In particular, I'm excited about multi-modal models that are able to translate, let's say, data into images and other types of visualizations. Okay. So it's a little bit of a stretch, but try to follow along, and hopefully this will make more sense. And hopefully this will give you long-term vision as well to be able to complete projects that have sustainable meaning. Okay. So let's say, for example, right now you are working frequently in as a sales secretary to develop intuition, develop experience, and hopefully develop enough knowledge and experience to generate faster automation to simplify the process, all right, to elevate the process. Okay. Now we've accomplished much. We've accomplished this location grade, okay, for the actual visualization. Actually, this should probably be updated by now using Aether, but we don't have much on product user fit, and that could be another area where we start going into more detail. Okay, so product user fit is the ability to visualize and understand who our guests are in a particular area. Now, we have a lot of guest information at this point. We have numerous reviews. We have numerous, let's say, ability to understand what guests are doing. So it's come to my attention that we probably need something at some point in order to predict what users are likely to do and be able to um, build content and build systems that are a tighter fit. Okay. Now, let's stop here and go into the second chapter of this discussion. And I'm going to try to link this together with what we're trying to do with Thea. Okay. So you have to remember this in like the bigger picture. Booty and Thea are actually the same agent. They're actually the same person. The reason why they're the same person is because the context window of each of our users is the same. It's just that the stage of the user journey is different. Booty is basically should have the same knowledge about the user as Thea does. They share the same context, the same ability to understand users, but they need to be able to kind of predict better what's going on. Okay. Now I'm going to show you what we're doing with Thea to enormously improve her capability to solve problems. Okay. So here it is. The previous Thea was open-ended. Open-ended means that we don't have a feedback system that is learning something about the user. Okay. Or anything we actually do becomes a risky churn risk because we're testing out an idea of how they should talk with a user whom, like if it works, it works, but if it doesn't, then they get offended. There's cultural and diplomacy and all these T1 level issues. Okay. So what we've decided to do is that this component, which is building a user persona for each of our partners, has become very important. So the work in building a persona is collecting the correct package of data in order to create an identity, a relationship, and an engagement model. I'll go into more detail what I mean by that, okay? So the idea behind this then becomes, all right, is it possible for us to gather enough information to actually create a digital twin, a duplicate of this owner that we are looking at? We think so. We think that there's probably first party data, which is conversation records, HubSpot records, contracts. Then there's second party data, which is a social graph, Kate, LinkedIn, all these components. And the goal is to build a accurate representation of our user so that our AI as Thea has a counterparty, the actual partner persona, to test out different ideas. Okay. So that means the old Thea could only, let's say, anticipate and maybe say something in an open loop. But with a counterparty, uh, new Thea can try out many times against the user persona and learn about whether or not what she's about to say will have not just factual impact, but correctly steer the relationship as well. This is the leading problem and probably one of the differences between Thea and Gaia. Gaia can just be factually accurate, and most guests are fine with that. But Thea is a long-term relationship robot, so it needs to somehow be like, I guess, what a social media feed is in terms of its relationship with its users. It needs to recommend content and be able to understand what that person is like. Okay. So the structure in which we want to build this is as such. The first tier of data that we collect builds an identity, which is kind of like a vector, right? So the idea, I'm not talking about a vector in terms of, I'm not talking about a vector in terms of, a vector, not in terms of a large language model embedding. I'm talking about a vector in terms of the mathematical idea, okay? So users are not a point, okay? Users start as an identity and then they follow a particular trajectory over time. And that trajectory also changes, goes up and down, but you need to start somewhere with a origin, okay? So the analogy here is that the origin is the zeroth tier of data. It is their identity. How old are they? Where were they born? What is the schooling and education they have? You see, these particular origin points then allow us to model a user knowing where they begin, okay? Then there's first tier data in the relationships that I've highlighted here. And then there's engagement data also related to how they are interfacing with our application, okay? So chapter 3. This now is where I try to bridge what you're doing together in a few different options. And I present this as ideas that you can utilize at this point to create things, okay? Things that matter. Number one, You can safely practice product user fit visualizations if you can think of a mechanism in order to gather guest information, okay, from all different sources in order to create a stronger and more appealing, more engaging way to actually show product user fit, okay? So product user fit is evidenced actually on Airbnb by comparing the listing, let's say, parameters and features against those guests that seem to have booked it, right? So what is it that we can learn about, whoops, okay, I guess here is not my Airbnb profile, so I do not have, let's see, maybe this works a little bit better. Hopefully I'm profiled in on this one. Okay, yes. Okay, so let's go over this idea of guest product market fit. Let's take one of our properties over here. Okay, so we have features on this particular property, but we also have then information about what type of guests we receive. We know that they're from Canada. We can probably look at, let's say, their profile pictures, maybe estimate an age. We can probably go inside also second detail and start collecting this data as well. Okay, so what we're trying to do is if we can do this at scale, we can look at all the properties in Bali. We can look at all the guests that have left reviews on that and try to find insights over time. Okay. We basically append a extension to Aether. So imagine Aether now, but with the capability. Imagine Aether now, but with the capability of also revealing, well, what type of guests comprise that particular tower, right? So if we're looking into each visualization of each stack of Airbnb reviews, okay, you're going to have to just listen to me here because, clearly Aether hasn't loaded yet, which is a problem, actually. Not sure why it's not loading. But if we can look inside that stack of reviews and understand something more intriguing and interesting about the guest and insightful, then that is super helpful too, as well. Now you've understood product market fit. You've understood something about what the guests that want to stay in a particular area have in common. Okay. And that is also really good. Okay, that's insightful, and that can lead to stronger visualization and stronger understanding. Okay. Alternatively, you can model our current users too as well. Artie currently is already working on a project to understand and initiate, let's say, an idea to model the users. But I don't think there's any harm with trying a parallel approach at this point by your own inspiration. Okay. So that's chapter 3 at this point. Okay. Final chapter here. Okay. I'm just giving you ideas. I'm giving you a vision of what kind of work can be strategically valuable to the company and also to build your career here. Clearly, as you can see, we have not achieved many of our revenue goals. And I think it's because there's probably a lack of vision on what we really need to do. Okay. Even though there's capable people here, I think you're one of the capable people. So basically, you choose or you decide what project you want to pursue. I can pretty much guarantee, and come back to me if your leaders don't actually agree with you on that one and they prefer you to do something else. Okay. But consider this an opportunity because I did see that you have high potential and it's probably unsettling and unsatisfactory to you too as well that there's no interesting projects to work on and nobody's actually given you, let's say, something that you can dig your teeth into. Okay. But the long term, I'd say, trajectory for what you can think about building, what you can think about improving is it possible to have Aether start speaking more visually about product user fit, location, ranking potential? Now, that's one track. Okay. So that's a track on product, that's a track on building a better Aether. Okay. And maybe eventually you'll figure out also different ways classifying and visualizing owner relationship and also guest experiences as well on a heat map. Okay. all lively possibilities if you want to focus on product. If you want to focus more on a data track, okay, like you want to take a look and decide that, you know what I really want to do is to stay on point with the partner as a user and understand everything about that partner in order to fulfill a faster sales flywheel, then that's another track available to you as well. Okay. I present options, you choose options, you notify your leaders that you were inspired. Okay. If you think that these ideas are not worthwhile, that's fine too. There's no pressure. I'm a person with a lot of ideas. So if I can help map some ideas out, that's where I try to add value. Okay, hopefully this makes sense and look forward to seeing your MSMs fulfilled.